Welcome back to another Front Office Rocks Practice by Numbers training video or overview video. I'm Laura from Front Office Rocks, and I'm with Rohit from Practice by Numbers. And I think this is 100% the reason that I believe Practice by Numbers is superior to any other software like this out in our industry. Practice by Numbers not only, and if you've seen in other videos or if you haven't watched them yet, please watch them, not only tells you how your practice is doing, what percentages of case acceptance you're getting, how many patients are you pre-appointing, but what this part of Practice by Numbers is that got me so excited is it gives you a resource to do something about it. So let's say, for example, that you only had a 30% case acceptance. Well, then what do you do with that number? If you know you're only at 30% and you really want a higher percentage of case acceptance, what do you do with that number? Now, granted, you need training in your office, which is Front Office Rocks, but also you need to know, where do you go? How do you follow up with patients? Where's the list coming from? Who can you call? Who can you fit in the schedule? That's why I love Practice by Numbers. So Rohit's going to show us here Revenue IQ, which is an actual application that you can use in your practice starting tomorrow to get your team on the phones to get your patients back in. So I'm going to hand it over to you to show us how great this is.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Laura. And thanks for being part of another video between Front Office Rocks and Practice by Numbers. I've heard lots of good feedback and people are watching it. So thank you. So Revenue IQ, everybody who gets Practice IQ gets Revenue IQ by default. It's an included product or portion of Practice IQ. And it's one of the most useful areas where you take all the things that you learn in Practice IQ and you apply them over here to say, making a lot of the things that you're looking into Practice IQ actionable. Okay? And within Revenue IQ, you can create lists, you can make calls based on those lists and make changes and updates on what happened when you talk to that patient. And then you can also track the performance of each employee. Let's say you have 3 employees making phone calls. You can track performance of each employee and which employee is able to schedule the most appointments as possible. And that's very important. And that's where training comes in. So if you see employee 1 made 50 calls and scheduled 5 patients versus employee made 50 calls and scheduled 15 patients, obviously there's something different going on between what they're saying on the phone or even what message are they leaving on their voicemail. Even that makes a difference. Okay? So Revenue IQ, you click on the Revenue IQ from the main Practice IQ, from the main Practice by Numbers page once you're logged in, and it gives you a couple of options. It gives you an option for treatment. This is, as it states, being able to search for all kinds of treatment. And we have a certain macros, and we'll do another video right after this that goes into the details of how do you find incomplete treatment. And we can make this pretty granular in terms of what you're looking for by insurance companies, by insurance balances and all that. The next section that we allow you to search on is recalls. Okay? You want to be able to search on how many patients have either recalls coming up or recalls that are overdue. So with the click over button, same thing, I can find all kinds of recalls. If they're due in 1 month or they've been overdue by 3 months, 6 months, and so on. Again, you can create a list and you can call patients from it. And we'll go to the details on how to do that. Now let's show you a few different areas. Patient reactivation is another different area which every single practice should be implementing as a reactivation program to close that back door in the office, which lets your patients walk right back through the door after they have not come in for 12 to 18 months. And Laura will tell you the likelihood of that patient coming back to the practice goes down significantly once they haven't been in, 12 months or 18 months? How do you?
I'd say over 12 months, it really goes down significantly. 18's too long. So we want to try to catch them, by 12 months if possible.
Right. So and most offices don't implement a reactivation program. It's because it's difficult to implement. It's very hard to implement, to keep track of things. And we'll do another video on that today itself on what that reactivation program looks like. Okay.
And before you go to the next one, because I know you're about to go into canceled appointments to show the rest of this, I just wanted to say, as an office manager myself, and as the owner of Front Office Rocks, I'm so excited about this part of Practice by Numbers, because now I have a resource that I can tell my team, this is how we're doing in a certain area. but then I can give them a resource. Each one of my girls has their own logins, each one of my team, and they can log in and pull a list, and they have a list of who to call. We have a doctor scheduler, she calls on the treatment. We have our hygiene scheduler, she calls on the recall patients. And it's a list, it's a running list that they can keep going to. The number one thing I cannot stand hearing is there's no one else to call. There's always somebody to call. And as you can see already, what he's shown us, there are so many different variations of lists. So when you're trying to fill the schedule, you're trying to get patients back, it's a lot different to go to Eaglesoft or Dentrix and pull a piece of paper report and check things off versus this, which is right here, right in front of your employees, and it gets them on the phone as soon as possible. So I just love this part of Practice by Numbers.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. So we were on the same turn, on the same vein. So if we talked about treatment planning or treatment follow-ups, we talked about recalls, we talked about reactivation. Now, what are the other ways people or your patients slip through the cracks? Another way patients slip through the cracks is when you have canceled or failed appointments and nobody calls them back. Patients sometimes are too embarrassed once they fail an appointment to even call you back. So it's up to you to call them back to make sure they get back on the schedule. And the canceled appointments opportunity on the Revenue IQ does exactly that. You can search for either just canceled appointments, failed and broken appointments, or just both. And if I run this query just in this practice for the last 3 months, let's see the number that comes up. 58 patients that had failed or canceled appointments that don't have any future appointments. Now, if you don't call them back, you're going to end up losing these patients.
And for the doctor, if there's doctors watching this, a lot of times the doctors don't understand what's going on in the front office. They just know their schedule was full. Then they walk in and there's empty, there's holes in the schedule. So this is going to help you become more involved with your front office team to be able to see, okay, well, we had 58 cancel. Who's making phone calls? Let's get on the phones. So you'll be able to get more control of what's going on up front, where in the past you haven't really been able to, because you haven't been able to pull this information easily out of the practice management software.
Right. And on a different note, then we have pre-appointments. And most of you know the importance of pre-appointing your hygiene patients. And this list and it's a dynamic list, this list will help you make sure those patients that did walk out the door without their next hygiene visit are brought back in. So you're calling them back, maybe not the same day because they just left, maybe the next day morning that patient Joe, we are so sorry we let you walk out the door without an appointment. Can we schedule your 6-month appointment? So we do find that time, and I'm sure Laura has great scripts for that. So we're trying to basically close all the places where you lose your patients from. Okay? And this is what this list helps you bring. Now, the list is only outgoing, but you also want to be able to understand when you do make those calls, how effective is making those calls. And you will start making those calls, and sometimes it's an exercise in frustration because you will make calls and people will either not pick up the phone or you'll leave a lot of voicemails. And even when you start to get patients on the phone, very few will actually schedule. And that's not because they do not want to reschedule. It has a lot to do with training, with what you say, and how you present it. So it will not, suddenly you won't have 100 calls made and 100 patients scheduled. It will start with 100 calls made, 5 patients scheduled. But remember, that's still those 5 patients you could have actually lost. So the net outcome is still positive. So let me actually jump in and show you before we end this video. The performance section is very important, which is understanding how many calls were made, who made those calls in your office, and what is the performance there. So right now here I'm showing recalls. In the month of January, this particular office made 32 calls for recalls. Okay, 24 of them, they left messages. 3 of them did not schedule, and here was the reason why they put those did not schedule. And 2 or 3 did schedule. So their overall percentage of people who did schedule was about 50%, and 50% out of the people that you actually spoke with. Now that's a pretty good number, and they've only worked 2 or 3 days this week. So they're running a little bit behind. So I would want them to schedule make at least 15 to 20 calls in a day. But they did make quite a few treatment calls. And if I click on individual tabs, it will tell me exactly who is making those calls.
Now, for me, this is huge because the one thing we don't have enough of at the front desk is time. You hear your staff probably telling you there's not enough time, there's not enough time. And one of the things we need to make sure that we train our teams on is the importance of calls. We get busy doing all these other things and we forget that we have to pick up the phones and reach out to our patients, because those patients that aren't in our schedule, if we're not reaching out to them, time flies. It's 6 months, it's a year, it's 18 months. Before you know it, they haven't been to our practice in 2 years. They haven't gone anywhere else probably. They just haven't gone to our practice in 2 years. And then the other thing is when they're in the office, you know, we have this sense of urgency. We got to fix your tooth. We got to get this tooth taken care of. Well, when they leave and we haven't followed up with them for months and months and months, what is that telling the patient? That maybe it's not as important as we made it seem to be. So this, and we're gonna go more in depth in this, so watch future videos, but what this will do is it'll give you an actual way to manage your team, to talk to them about the importance of getting on the phones, and then see how they do. And if they're making a lot of calls but not appointing a lot of patients, then get them some training. Make sure that there's enough resources in the front so they have time to get on the phones, because you know, patients don't love coming to the dentist. We have to be honest about that. So it's our job to always be reaching out to them to get them to come in and make the appointments or schedule the appointments with us. So this is amazing. We're going to get into much more of this in our next future videos, but this is just an overview for doctors and office managers to see how you'll be able to manage your team, their calls and the results of their calls with this awesome software, or this amazing software. So thank you again. Watch some of the future videos. We're going to show you guys how to get into the nitty gritty now of getting on the phones with the patients.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Laura. And we'll be right back in a little bit with another video that's going to talk about treatment follow-up.
Perfect.